Two twin sisters inherited an abandoned cabin deep in the woods, but what they found hidden beneath the floorboards would change everything they thought they knew about their family. It wasn't gold. It wasn't treasure. It was a secret geode mine glowing with crystal walls, ancient carvings, and a mystery no one had uncovered for generations. But this isn't just a story about rocks and hidden doors. It's a story about healing, about coming home, about two women who returned to their past and discovered the legacy that was always waiting for them. Stay with us. This is one emotional story you'll never forget. But before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing our global family in the comments. Let's get started. They hadn't been back in decades. Charlotte and Evelyn, twin sisters now in their late 40s, stood shoulder to shoulder, gazing at the crooked outline of the cabin tucked deep in the Oregon woods. It was theirs now left to them after their uncle passed, the same man who used to chase them around this forest with pine cones and stories of buried treasures. The wood had faded. The porch creaked with every step. But it still smelled like cedar and memories. "This place," Charlotte whispered, running her fingers along the chipped frame of the doorway. "It still feels like home." Evelyn didn't speak. She just smiled with tears in her eyes, the wind catching her graying curls. The cabin was more than just a structure. It was a time capsule of summers long gone. Sticky fingers from peach pies, fireflies in mason jars, and lullabies sung under a leaking roof. The dust didn't hide the warmth, it whispered it. And though they thought they were here only to close a chapter, fate had kept one page sealed shut. Waiting. The morning after they arrived, frost still clung to the windows like a memory unwilling to fade. Charlotte had risen early, the way she always did when she felt unsettled. She brewed coffee the old-way percolator on the stovetop, the smell rising like ghosts from childhood. Evelyn joined her silently, a worn flannel wrapped around her shoulders. "I dreamt about him last night," Evelyn murmured. "Uncle Thomas." She nodded. "He was here, sitting right where you are now. He didn't say anything, just smiled, like he knew something." They sipped in silence, the kind only lifelong sisters can share. But something had shifted. A tug, a whisper from the walls. Later that day, they decided to start cleaning the parts of the cabin they hadn't seen since they were teenagers. The pantry, the cellar, the back shed. The pantry was first, narrow, dust-choked, still lined with jars filled decades ago, pickled beans, canned peaches, something unidentifiable and furry at the bottom shelf. "Smells like time forgot this place," Charlotte chuckled, holding her nose. But behind a row of shelves, Evelyn noticed something strange, a strip of wallpaper that didn't match the rest. It peeled easily, revealing wood beneath, and then a gap. "Hold this," she said, handing Charlotte the flashlight. They pushed aside the shelf, revealing a rotted panel barely clinging to the wall. With a soft pop, it fell forward, revealing a dark recess. Inside was an old leather satchel. Charlotte pulled it out gently, as if it might disintegrate. Inside a rolled-up map, water-stained and fragile, and a brass key. The sisters looked at each other. "Uncle Thomas," Evelyn whispered, "what were you hiding?" The map led them to the shed. It had always been an afterthought on the property, a leaning thing with half its shingles missing. More home to raccoons than people. But the key fit the rusted padlock like it had been waiting. Inside, beneath a broken crate and moldy tarp, was a trapdoor. Charlotte hesitated. "This is crazy." But Evelyn was already pulling it open, revealing a steep staircase descending into earth and shadow. "Bring the light," she said. The air changed as they stepped down. Cooler. Damp. The kind of silence that wraps around you like a shroud. Their boots echoed softly on stone as the passage curved gently forward. Cobwebs hung like lace across their shoulders. Tree roots broke through the stone in places, curling like fingers. And then another door. This one wasn't made of wood, but thick iron, embedded in the stone. The key didn't fit, but the lock was already broken, hanging uselessly from its latch. Charlotte pushed. The door creaked open to blackness, and then shimmered. They froze. The tunnel beyond glowed faintly, walls lined with something they couldn't yet understand. It was like the rock itself had veins of light running through it. Charlotte stepped forward, and her breath caught. It wasn't just a tunnel. It was a corridor of crystals. The geodes began small clusters no larger than a baseball, nestled into the stone like forgotten gems. But as they moved deeper, the walls exploded in brilliance. Towering spires of amethyst, pools of smoky quartz, glittering veins of citron. The flashlight wasn't needed anymore. The crystals caught even the faintest light and danced with it. Evelyn reached out, touching a pale blue formation. "They're alive," she whispered. Charlotte crouched near one the size of a dinner plate, cracked open slightly. Inside, a universe sparkled tiny points of starlight in mineral form. They were speechless. "I don't think anyone's been down here in—" "Maybe ever," Charlotte said. "Except Uncle Thomas," Evelyn replied. "This is what he was hiding. Not from us, just protecting." They sat there, in the heart of the earth, feeling like trespassers in a cathedral no human had built. Later, when they climbed back up into the shed, daylight hit them like a slap. The world felt too bright, too loud. They looked at each other, their faces dirty, eyes wide. "Are we dreaming?" Evelyn asked. Charlotte didn't answer. She just hugged her. The kind of hug that says no matter what happens next, we share this now. The cabin no longer felt old and forgotten. It was a threshold. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Charlotte lay awake, listening to the crackle of the old fireplace, its warmth not quite reaching the strange chill that had settled inside her. Not fear exactly. Something else. Wonder, maybe. Or the weight of secrets finally coming to light. In the loft above, Evelyn stirred restlessly. The discovery had shaken something loose in both of them. Not just curiosity, but purpose. The kind they hadn't felt in years. But what neither of them knew was that the mine had not been silent all these years. Something had been listening. The next morning began with a bang, literally. A thunderous thud echoed through the cabin as the earth seemed to groan beneath them. Dishes rattled in the cupboards. The coffee pot tipped and shattered on the floor. "What was that?" Evelyn shouted, running down the stairs barefoot. "Earthquake," Charlotte asked, grabbing her coat. They rushed outside, the cold air sharp against their faces. Birds scattered from the trees, but the forest itself was still. Then Evelyn pointed toward the shed. The door stood ajar, though they had locked it the night before. Charlotte's stomach dropped. "I shut that." "I know. Evelyn said, 'I saw you.'" They approached slowly, hearts pounding in sync. The trapdoor was still open, but the light they had left strung along the staircase was torn down. Some pieces of it were shattered. Others melted. "What the hell?" Charlotte whispered. They descended cautiously, flashlights back in hand. The air was different. Heavier. Wet. At the base of the stairs, they found the iron door wide open again, though neither remembered unlocking it. Evelyn reached for her sister's hand. "Stay close." The corridor hadn't changed, but something had shifted. The crystals no longer sparkled with the same brilliance. Some looked dulled. Others cracked, as if wounded. They moved deeper, toward the chamber they had discovered the day before. That's when they saw it. A wall that had previously seemed solid was now open, collapsed inward, revealing a second tunnel, darker than the first. Against every instinct, they stepped inside. This tunnel was narrower. The walls pulsed with a faint glow, like embers under ash. And on the ground, scattered among the stone, were fragments, shards of geode, some glimmering faintly, others blackened. Then Charlotte's light flicked across something that didn't belong. A carving. It was crude, ancient, perhaps. Etched into the stone was a symbol, two interlocking spirals with a line running through them. Below it, a handprint. It wasn't child-sized. "Did Uncle Thomas do this?" Evelyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't think so." Further down the corridor, they found more marking symbols, strange tools half buried in the dirt, and what looked like bones. Small, not human. The sisters stared at them, unsure if they should go forward or run. But then Charlotte spotted something in the corner, a wooden box, weathered, locked with a latch. She opened it slowly. Inside, wrapped in aged linen, was a journal. The handwriting was familiar. "Uncle Thomas," she whispered. They sat down in the tunnel, flipping carefully through the brittle pages. The entries began as you'd expect. June 12th. Found the door behind the shed. Used to think Dad was just telling stories to keep us out. But it's real. July 5th. The crystals are unlike anything I've ever seen. Some respond to light, others to sound. There's something alive down here. I don't mean that it moves. I mean, it feels. August 18th. I heard it, like a hum. A voice, almost. I thought I imagined it. But then the walls changed color. The geodes react, not randomly. They know when I'm here. October 3rd. I stopped telling anyone, not even my brother. No one would believe me anyway. But I think this place was never meant to be found. And I think I've stayed too long. November 11th. If you're reading this, I'm sorry. I tried to keep it sealed, but it calls to blood, family. It let me in. It will let you in too. The journal ended there. The sisters sat in stunned silence. Charlotte closed the book slowly. He wasn't crazy. "No," Evelyn said. "He was protecting something. Maybe even us." They looked around at the chamber, no longer just beautiful, but mysterious, sacred, alive in a way no one could explain. A low rumble echoed through the tunnel again, gentler this time. Not threatening, like a whisper, a welcome. And then, softly, a section of the wall lit up. Geodes shifted, revealing a mosaic, dozens of small crystals forming an image. Two figures. Twin figures. They stood up, unable to speak. The mine had known them. It had waited. Charlotte turned to her sister, voice shaking. "This isn't just a discovery. It's part of us." Evelyn nodded, tears in her eyes. "Uncle Thomas didn't just leave us the cabin. He left us this." The crystals pulsed once more, then faded to a gentle glow, as if settling back into sleep. The sisters left the tunnel slowly, heartbeats matching the rhythm of the earth beneath their feet. Outside, the sky had shifted, early evening gold pouring through the trees. The cabin stood in silhouette, its windows glowing with a light that felt warmer than fire. They had come looking for closure. Instead, they had found an origin, and something far, far bigger than either of them had ever imagined. The days that followed moved like autumn fog, slow and thick with thought. Charlotte found herself waking earlier than usual, slipping out onto the sagging front porch with a blanket and a journal in hand. She'd sit for hours, staring at the woods as the wind whispered through the pines, her fingers unconsciously tracing the strange spiral symbol they had seen carved into the stone. Evelyn, on the other hand, had become the keeper of the journal Uncle Thomas left behind. She read each page as if they were sacred scripture, sometimes out loud, sometimes silently, lips moving in rhythm with memory. There were questions that clawed at them. Who carved those symbols in the mine? How long had it been there? Why them? But what gnawed even deeper wasn't the mystery. It was the feeling that everything they'd ever known about their family was incomplete. One afternoon, Charlotte pulled a weathered photo album from a dust-covered box in the attic. Most of the photos were familiar birthday cakes, camping trips, a blurry picture of the two girls riding bikes down a dirt path near the cabin. But then she found it. Tucked behind a photo of their mother holding a newborn was a yellowed letter, folded twice. It was addressed to no one, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Uncle Thomas. She unfolded it carefully. Some things are passed down in silence, not because they're shameful, but because words would fail them. The mine chose me once. I never understood why. I just knew it pulsed when I was near. It listened. It taught. But it also warned. I stayed away as long as I could, but the pull came back stronger. Maybe it knew I was running out of time. Maybe it knew who was coming next. If the girls find it, I hope they'll understand it's not just a gift. It's a burden. A bridge between something old and something forgotten. But if they feel what I felt, if the crystals speak to them, then they'll know. This was always meant for them. Charlotte didn't cry. She sat in silence for a long time, her hand gripping the letter like an anchor. Later, when she showed Evelyn, they didn't speak. They didn't need to. Everything was changing. That night, they returned to the mine, but not to explore, to listen. They brought no lights, no cameras, no tools, just themselves. As they stepped through the iron door, something was different. The air wasn't just cool, it was welcoming. Familiar. The way the cabin used to feel when they were little, and their mother would read them bedtime stories under a patchwork quilt. In the Geode chamber, they sat cross-legged on the smooth stone floor, surrounded by shimmering crystals that pulsed softly like breath. Evelyn closed her eyes. "Do you feel it?" Charlotte nodded. "Like it's waiting." They stayed like that for what felt like hours until Evelyn whispered something she hadn't told anyone. Not even Charlotte. "I used to come here," she said. Charlotte turned sharply. "What?" "Not here exactly, but in dreams. Since I was a kid, there was always this glowing cave. I thought it was just imagination. But now, I think I was remembering something." Charlotte didn't laugh. She didn't scoff. She simply said, "Me too." The mine hadn't just been a secret. It had been part of them. A memory passed through blood, like music or longing. And now, they began to see it not as a place to mine or preserve, but as a living story, unfolding just for them. The crystals weren't just minerals. They were messengers. Every color, every crack, every shimmer told a truth without words. Some reflected sorrow, deep blues that seemed to echo with grief. Others pulsed with joy, vibrant golds, gentle pinks that made your heart lift. Some had no name at all, colors neither sister had ever seen before, like the edge of a dream you can't quite remember. It was then Charlotte realized something the mine had changed because they had. When they first found it, they entered with awe and curiosity. Now they entered with reverence. The mine responded in kind. Evelyn stood, walking to a nearby wall lined with clusters of crystal in spiral patterns. "They repeat," she said. "Look, Charlotte stepped beside her. The spirals echoed what they had seen carved in the tunnel, two intertwining lines, always touching, never merging, like sisters, like stories. "Do you think this is some kind of language?" Charlotte asked. Evelyn smiled. "No, I think it's a memory." As they left that night, Charlotte turned one last time toward the glowing chamber. It didn't feel like saying goodbye. It felt like leaving a part of herself behind, but knowing it would still be there. Alive. Outside, the air had turned colder. The stars blinked through the trees. Back at the cabin, they lit a fire, made tea, and curled up in the same blanket on the old couch. "I used to think this place was just a relic," Charlotte said, "like something left behind." Evelyn nodded. "Now I think it's the beginning." They sat in silence for a while. Not heavy silence. Sacred silence. And as the fire crackled, Charlotte whispered what both of them had been thinking since the day they arrived. "This is our story now." By the 5th day, the cabin no longer felt abandoned. May. It buzzed with a quiet energy, like the walls themselves had been stirred from slumber. Dust was swept, windows opened, old curtains traded for light. Charlotte joked that the cabin was finally breathing again, and Evelyn agreed. But deeper down, they both knew the breath had come from somewhere far below, where amethyst spires still whispered beneath stone. At the kitchen table, over steaming mugs of herbal tea, they laid everything out. The map, the journal, the photos, their memories. But this time, the question wasn't, "What is this place?" It was, "What are we supposed to do with it?" Charlotte tapped the table thoughtfully. "We can't keep this a secret forever." Evelyn looked up, brow furrowed. "Should we tell anyone at all?" They sat in silence for a moment. Because it wasn't just about the mine anymore. It was about responsibility. "This isn't gold or oil or something we can just claim," Evelyn said. "It's ancient, alive, like it's part of the Earth's memory." Charlotte nodded. "But it's also breathtaking. People deserve to see it, to feel it, just like we did." Evelyn leaned back in her chair. "Then maybe that's the answer." Charlotte raised an eyebrow. "What is? We don't extract it. We protect it." And so, the idea began, not of mining, not of monetizing, but of preserving. A place where people could come not to take, but to witness, a sanctuary of geology, history, spirit. They scribbled ideas on notepads like teenagers planning a secret treehouse. The Geode Sanctuary, Echo Hollow, the Crystal Heart. None of them felt quite right yet, but the intention was clear. They wouldn't exploit the beauty beneath them. They would share it respectfully, carefully, and only with those who came with open hearts. They started researching. Evelyn called an old professor she knew from college who specialized in mineral formations. Charlotte contacted a land trust organization. They both spent hours combing through legal documents, trying to understand how to protect the land without losing it to bureaucracy. And always, the mine guided them. Every time they returned, it revealed something new. Once, a wall of shimmering green geodes, shaped like feathers. Another time, a natural echo chamber where their voices layered into harmonies. And once, a pool of still water so clear they could see the crystals growing beneath like underwater flowers. Each visit deepened their belief. This wasn't just a mine. It was a sacred space. Word began to spread, but gently, like wind through pine. They shared the discovery with only a handful of people, a local historian, a geologist from the nearby university, a family friend who worked in conservation. All were sworn to secrecy, but none of them could hide their wonder. "I've studied formations across the globe," the geologist said, eyes wide as he touched a wall of lavender quartz. "But this is something else entirely. The historian brought old maps of the region, none of which marked a mine. But one, dated 1863, had a note in the margin. Forest sings, stone glows, spirits guard. Evelyn smiled. It's always been here, just waiting. With guidance, they drafted plans for an underground path, raised wooden walkways that wouldn't disturb the formations, dim lighting to preserve the natural glow, a single guided route with limited visitors each season. But not yet, not until it was ready. We'll move slowly, Charlotte said, with the same care it took to find it. They also began recording their journey not for publicity, but for documentation. A video diary, voice memos, photos, so that when the time came, the full story would be preserved. And they made one unbreakable promise: no crystal would ever be taken from the mine. Not even one. It's not ours to keep, Evelyn said. It's ours to protect. In the evenings, they'd sit on the front steps of the cabin and watch the sun melt into the trees. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they just were. One night, as fireflies danced through the grass, Charlotte turned to Evelyn and asked, "Do you ever wonder why us?" Evelyn smiled softly. "No. I think we were always meant to come back, not to find the mine, but to remember who we are." Charlotte tilted her head. "And who's that?" Evelyn looked at her sister, her mirror, her history, her other half, and said, "The ones who carry the story forward." The wind shifted the next morning. It carried a sharp chill, the kind that cuts through sweaters and settles into bone. Leaves whispered across the front steps as Charlotte sat alone, watching the horizon bleed from gray to rose. The mine had changed her. She could feel it in the silence between thoughts, in the way her hands no longer trembled when she touched the unknown. But not everything had healed. Inside, Evelyn was packing, not to leave, but to return to the city for a week. Her youngest daughter had a school recital, and Evelyn had promised she'd be there. "I'll be back in 6 days," she said, pulling her suitcase shut. "Maybe 7, depending on flights." Charlotte forced a smile. "Don't worry. I'll keep the crystals company." Evelyn paused, her hand on the old doorknob. "You okay with being here alone?" Charlotte hesitated, and then nodded. "Yeah, I think I need to be." After Evelyn left, the cabin grew quiet again, but not like before. This quiet felt intentional, like the house was giving her space. Charlotte spent the next 2 days deep inside the mine, walking paths they hadn't explored yet, often alone with only the sound of her breath echoing through crystal-lined tunnels. She spoke aloud sometimes, not to herself, but to Uncle Thomas. She told him about the plans they were making, about the name they'd finally chosen, the Hollow Light, about the way the mine seemed to respond to their emotions like a mirror of memory. And then she said the words she'd been avoiding for decades. "I'm sorry we didn't come to your funeral." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It felt understanding. That night, she dreamed vividly. She was back in the cabin. But it wasn't as it was now. It was whole, restored. There were voices, laughter in the kitchen, the sound of Evelyn's younger voice shouting through the hall. Her mother was humming in the garden, and Uncle Thomas sat on the porch carving a piece of wood into something unrecognizable yet full of purpose. She approached him, barefoot, childlike again. "What are you making?" she asked. He looked up, smiled gently, and said, "A map." "To where?" "To what you already know." She woke up crying, not because the dream was sad, but because it reminded her of who she used to be and how far she had come from that girl who once believed in magic. Later that day, she returned to the mine with a small bundle in her arms, an old photograph of the family, a jar of soil from the garden out front, and a music box that had once belonged to her mother. She found a small alcove where the light shimmered like water, and she placed the items there not as an offering, but as an anchor, a way to say, "We were here. We remember." And when she wound the music box and let it play, the crystals around her hummed back in soft vibrations, like a lullaby echoing through stone. When Evelyn returned 3 days later, she found her sister sitting outside, hair wind-blown, face sun-kissed, barefoot in the grass. "You look different," Evelyn said. Charlotte smiled. "I feel different." They sat together under the oak tree where they used to build forts as kids, legs tucked under them like children again. "I've been thinking," Charlotte said, "about us, about all of it." Evelyn looked at her with quiet curiosity. "I used to be afraid of this place." Charlotte confessed, "Not the mine, this." She motioned to the land, the cabin, the memories. "I thought if I came back, I'd fall apart. But it's the opposite." Evelyn reached out and held her hand. "I know." Charlotte looked at her, eyes shimmering. "Thank you for making me come back." Evelyn squeezed her fingers. "Thank you for staying." They spent the evening preparing the cabin for winter, stacking firewood, fixing a broken window, lining the pantry with tea and canned food. It was work, yes, but it felt like ritual, like care passed through hands, like legacy sealed in effort. And that night, as the fire glowed and their laughter returned, Charlotte pulled out an old tape recorder she'd found in the attic. "Let's record the story," she said, "in our words, so that one day, when we're gone, they'll know what happened here, not just in facts, but in feeling." Evelyn nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes, let's—" They began to speak, and for the first time, the story didn't feel like a secret. It felt like a gift. Winter came softly. The first snowfall drifted in like a secret, blanketing the rooftop of the old cabin in silence. Charlotte woke before sunrise, pulling on thick wool socks and walking barefoot down the creaky stairs. Where frost kissed the windows, and a faint glow from the fireplace lit the living room like a memory. Outside, the trees stood still, branches heavy with white. The path to the mine was almost invisible now, just a subtle depression in the snow where their feet had once passed. Evelyn joined her a few minutes later, mug in hand. "Snow came early this year," she whispered. "Maybe it was waiting for us," Charlotte said. They sat at the windowsill, side by side, like they did when they were children, watching the world hold its breath. By now, the cabin had changed. So had they. Not just in the way they carried themselves or spoke with greater care, but in their hearts, in their bones, in their breath. The mine wasn't a destination anymore. It had become a part of them, woven into their stories, their healing, their very sense of belonging. And with that understanding came peace. Over the following weeks, they recorded everything. Not for money, not for fame, but for whoever came next. Their recordings weren't just logs. They were love letters to the land, to the cabin, to Uncle Thomas, to memory. They spoke about loss and finding their way back, about the ache of silence and the comfort of remembering, about how sometimes the things we think are broken are really just waiting for us to return. And then one evening, something extraordinary happened. They received a letter, handwritten, no return address, just 2 words on the envelope for the keepers. Inside, the note was brief. "I walked these woods 42 years ago. I was a child. I remember the ground humming under my feet, the trees singing at dusk. I thought I imagined it. I was told it was nonsense, but hearing your voices, I know I wasn't alone. Thank you." No name, no signature. Just proof that this place, this mystery had always been more than theirs. It was shared. The sisters stood in the mine that night with lanterns instead of flashlights. They had replaced the path with wooden planks, small railings to guide future visitors who might one day come. But that night, They were alone again. Not in solitude, but in sanctuary. Evelyn placed her hand on a cluster of rose-colored geodes that vibrated slightly beneath her palm. "Do you feel that?" Charlotte closed her eyes. "It's like it's saying goodbye." Evelyn smiled. "No, not goodbye. Just see you again." They stayed a while longer, not speaking, because words weren't needed here. Only presence. When they stepped out into the snow-covered night, the stars were blazing clearer than either had seen in years. Charlotte looked up, breath forming soft clouds in the cold air. "Do you think we were meant to find this?" she asked. Evelyn turned to her, eyes shining. "No, I think it was meant to find us." The decision came quietly but firmly. They filed for a private land trust. Protected forever. The papers read, "No development, no commercial mining, no destruction. Just stewardship. A promise to watch, to listen, to guide." They gave it a name not rooted in ownership but reverence. The Hollow Light Conservancy. And from time to time, they would open it once a year, maybe twice, to small groups of children, families, scientists, poets. Not to explain it, but to feel it. To sit in silence, to hear the stones sing, to remember. Years passed. The snow came and went. The seasons turned like pages, and the sisters, now older, slower, wiser, stayed in the cabin as long as the weather allowed. Some nights, they'd play the old music box. Others, they'd sit under the stars and read aloud letters sent from visitors, thanking them for the experience. Many cried. Some said it healed wounds they never knew they carried. "And always," the sisters replied with the same 3 words. It healed us too. On the final page of their recorded journal, long after the cabin had become legend and the mine a sacred secret, Charlotte's voice could be heard. Soft and steady, like wind through pine. "If you're hearing this, you've found it. Or maybe it found you. Whatever brought you here, know this. You are not alone. Some places remember. Some places forgive. And some just wait." This was once just a cabin, then a mine, then a mystery. But really it's a home. For wonder, for healing, for stories. We were 2 sisters who thought we came back to close a door. Instead, we found a way in. May you find yours too. And just like that, the story didn't end. It passed on. Softly. Gently. Like snow falling through still air waiting for someone else to follow the footprints. Some treasures in life can't be held in your hands. They aren't gold or gems or anything you can sell. They're found in forgotten cabins, in old letters, in the silence between 2 people who finally see each other again after years apart. The story of Charlotte and Evelyn isn't just about a secret geode mine. It's about something far more precious, the rediscovery of wonder, connection, and healing. It's a reminder that what we inherit isn't always land or property, it's legacy. And sometimes, the places we once tried to forget hold the very keys to who we are. Life will ask us, again and again, to return to places we've closed off. But when we choose to go back with open hearts and willing hands, we don't just find what was lost. We find ourselves. The end. Up next, 2 more unforgettable stories that will move your soul. Click to keep walking with us through wonder, and if you believe in second chances, don't forget to hit subscribe.